things you say from here on.
We're okay. This is definitely the
Yeah.
strangest thing of my life, as I'm sure everybody else would possibly be listening to this. Um,
Hey,
but we're
Jackie.
okay. Listen,
Jackie's on. She says hi.
hi, Jackie. It's thank God we're in Miami. The weather's been beautiful. It's starting to get hot, but all in all, what the hell do
Yeah.
I have to complain about?
Yeah. In the grand scheme of things, right? We have to like
Absolutely.
just take the little blessings and go with it. Yes, thank
That's
God for
kind
the
of the
hat
thing.
because we know the Jew fro is major.
Listen, y'all get jealous of this, okay? I know y'all get
Oh
my
my
piece of
goodness.
this, so let's just rip it out and let it out. It's better than the alternative of
It
not
wouldn't be
having it, and
you if you
trust
didn't
me,
have it.
as soon as
I
I can, I
know.
want
I
a
know.
haircut. How are you guys doing?
Please do. We're chugging. We're a resilient little set of people, you know. I've been actually
Hmm.
very proud of how we've been handling the situation. We've been pretty proactive, and I think we had the time to kind of prepare.
Right,
The difficulty now, of course, is that people don't really see it as a huge deal. So our
right,
cases have kind of almost tripled in the past couple of days just because of the large BPO sector that we have here
right.
and the larger offices and stuff. But we're just like everybody else. We're trying to be creative and trying to just keep it going.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem to be
Um,
as much of an
what
issue in the Caribbean and in South America as it is everywhere else. Or maybe that's just how the news is covering it here in North America. But
Yeah, I mean that's part of it. But again, remember our populations and our
right,
exposure is, 16th of what you guys have. So it's obviously going to be a little
right,
bit
right.
easier. When we closed our borders, it was a little bit easier to manage exposure. Now our issue is community spread. So that's what we have to
Hmm.
look at and try to control as best as possible. So
Right,
we're
because you have
just trying to do
population
that.
density in Kingston
We
specifically. Right.
and Montego Bay and all of the tourism sectors and people that work in a lot of the, as I said, the BPO industry has been a pretty
Hmm.
pretty rough one to kind of handle. So just like everything else, people take it for granted. So you just kind of go nuts. But
Well, enjoy those little kids of yours.
yes, of
Try to enjoy
course,
the
we
downtime.
all exactly. We all are trying to just be grateful for the downtime and the family
Right.
time that we don't get when we're in this business. You
Totally.
know, uh, just kind of thinking about all of this, like I can just imagine how everybody feels when they're grounded. It's like you and I especially you have offices in Miami and New York, and you're constantly on a plane, and you have clients all over the US. You must be going nuts.
For me not to be on a plane for 6 weeks, yeah, I'm slightly stir crazy. The people feeling it the worst, I would say, are Genevieve and Jake. But listen, this is bizarre times. We over the last 13 years have built this little company to be the largest in the country, and we're completely decimated, just like everybody else. So it's hard to feel
Yeah,
sorry for yourself
yeah,
knowing that so many of your friends and colleagues, such as yourself, and Randy and Devin and Lee and all these people that you love and admire and have worked with for so long are in the same boat as you. Um,
yeah,
the difference is we have so many people whose livelihood I directly impact. So that's the hardest part, right? The kind of the loathing and the kind of self kind of isolation, depression you put on yourself as a result of impacting so many others. But the reality
right,
is, no matter who you talk to, they're in the same situation. From restaurateurs, owners, operators, event planners, uh,
yeah,
it's just a matter of now survival. Get to the end game, and the end
hmm,
game obviously is a vaccine. Um, get there and then rebuild. Sad,
yeah.
harsh reality.
Well, let's backtrack a little bit for the people that have joined and for people that may not know who you are, who I am, and just kind of checking out our feed and figuring out what we're doing. In talking to Randy yesterday, it was crazy to think that we've been around each other for 15 years.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
insane. It's insane to think that I've been back in Jamaica 9 years when I kind of jumped up one day and told you that I couldn't be at agency anymore. So let's kind of go back to
For
that
very
and
good
let people
reasons.
know.
You left You
For
left for good
very,
reasons,
very
not
good
just to get
reasons.
rid of me.
Well, there's always a plus to things, Brett. Um, but kind of explain what Agency 21 is, where we were then, and where you are now.
Sure. So Agency 21 is an event management, sponsorship, sales, sponsorship activation, and brand consulting firm. We started this firm 13 years ago with one employee, i.e. myself. Shortly thereafter, joined by my partner, Alan, and then shortly thereafter, joined by his daughter, Lisa. When we first started, we were primarily a sponsorship sales in a small event management agency. Fast
Mm-hmm.
forward, we're now the largest of both in the culinary arena, very
Right.
specific genre within the event experiential space. We have over
Mm-hmm.
60 clients. Well, we had over 60 clients throughout the country, actually representing 27 to 30 markets,
Wow.
from Miami all the way up at some points to Banff, Canada. But
Wow.
currently for 2020, at least that what was on the docket,
Yeah.
Seattle, Portland, all of California. It's really incredible to see our growth, right? The experiential marketing space has really exploded and the culinary space has exploded. And we fully
Yeah.
expect that when people come back, it will come back. I just don't think it's going to come back as quickly.
Yeah.
The recovery is always longer than people seem to anticipate because, especially Americans, we have such short-term memories with everything.
Mm-hmm.
But that's who we are. We're an event management company. Who we are after this,
We'll see.
God knows.
Well, I mean, I, of course, we met through the South Beach Wine and Food Festival link. And, at the time, as you said, it was a very small space. It was just you and Alan, really, when you started out.
Mm-hmm.
And I was working in the office, and there was a very small group of us. And you and I had a lot of, had an intense relationship because of my interactions with sponsors and your interactions selling them and having to fulfill them. And to see where you guys have grown now, I mean, I know I've said it to you privately, I'm going to say it to you publicly. Like, I'm extremely proud of you guys. When we started, I mean, when I was there, it was 5 of us.
Mm-hmm.
And
Is this being recorded? I need to ensure that somebody can
yes,
document this.
it will be recorded, Brett. It's recorded. That I've given you your kudos.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think that what we used to do with what we had, and the millions of dollars in sponsorship that we've raised and
Mm-hmm.
collectively, and what you guys have built out of it. And part of why I'm doing this now is to kind of give people that hope to continue to drive and follow their
Mm-hmm.
passion. I know that passion piece is huge for you. It's always been the thing that guts
Mm-hmm.
you the most is when people
Mm-hmm.
don't have the passion to do what they're doing. So I wanted to publicly share that. I think it's very important that people recognize. I mean, yesterday's talk with Randy was really insightful because he started a lot later in the game,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
age-wise and also experience-wise. And I just think it's important to continue to drive that passion. And if that's what drives you, and if you find that the core of who you are is to make people happy, and that's your passion, continue to follow it. It may have different iterations because of circumstance,
Mm-hmm.
but follow it because so much can come from it.
Well, it's interesting, you bring up Randy, who we both adore and have both been through so much together with him. I remember back in the early days when it would just be a handful of us schlepping things, putting the first burger bash together, sweating it out, not really
Yeah.
having proper time to change versus where the festival has become now. But in large part, that kind of ties back into your point. It's the fire in your gut, right? You can use the terms passion, you can use the words tenacity. Um, it's that kind of drive that separates some people from others. That
Mm-hmm.
has always been, for me, and my kind of quirky personality, what has driven me, right?
Yeah.
It's this kind of underlining will to succeed.
Yeah.
And in moments like this, it's truly tested. It's
Mm-hmm.
weird. I've now been grounded for almost 6 weeks, and I've had 4 bad days. I keep track of them because I can't
Yeah.
stand that I've had one. And
Right.
so I like to think that passion, if anything, it's just kind of regenerating right now. And
Yeah.
I'm very much so looking forward to the rebuild. There's a lot of people, and I can tell you, Kimmy, I've spoken to almost every single PR company and event major planners in the space, not to mention 50, 60, 70 restaurateurs who we both love and respect. There's a lot of people that are going to burn out from this.
Oh
There's a lot
gosh,
of people
yes. If they haven't already.
who just don't have the will anymore. They did it, they
Yeah.
built it up, but to rebuild takes a certain type of individual.
Yep.
And so I, for one, am one of those people. But it's
Yeah.
difficult. Trust me, it's very challenging to kind of have that energy. I mean, again, we've talked about Randy a few times here. Randy was just starting 15 years ago at the age I am now. And
Right.
so it's, you know, I'm not the same person I was when I was 28 and started this agency now at, 40, 43. So it's, you have a different philosophy. Hell, we both have kids now,
Yep.
and we have husbands or wives. It's just different. So the
Yeah.
drive alters, but the passion has to continue.
Agreed. And I think, as you said, your mindset changes now that you have this many more lives that you're affecting. I mean, when we started, as I said, when I started with you, there was 5 of us. Where are you at now in terms of employment? I can't even keep track anymore.
Well, we have 31 full-time and
That's
an additional
insane.
8 full-time third party. And what I mean by that is for the additional 8 third parties, they only work on our projects. They don't work on any other projects. So in theory, of 39 full-time employees. But there's pressure that comes with that.
Of
right?
course.
Pressure never changes. It just kind of
it just shifts. Right.
Exactly. It's a shapeshifter.
Yeah.
And so the pressures right now is how do you survive in order to help those people feed their families?
Right.
And that's very difficult. You know, for example, we have canceled or postponed over 50 events just through July.
Oh my God.
We won't have any revenue until the end of August, we hope.
Yeah.
So it's a really challenging situation is who do you put first? The agency, yourself, selfishly, your employees. It's this never-ending wrestle that's going on right now because truthfully, the agency has to survive in order to rebuild. But how do you go about doing that?
Exactly. Because I think one of the challenges here too is, let's even shift to something a little bit simpler in terms of like stakeholders, like a wedding for argument's sake.
Sure.
You think about the components of that and all the people that it affects when it doesn't happen. So you're talking about starting from the top of the big decorator, the planner, the photographer, the videographer, the musician. But like here, talk about the people like, well, we use a lot of fabric to drape tents and stuff. That draping guy that is waiting on that money, that doesn't have a bankroll, that doesn't have the opportunity to go to a bank and ask for a loan, or is looking for that cash income in the month of August or whenever it is that they were looking for that income. It's a really tough pill to swallow, and I think we're all just trying to navigate through it and figure out how that trickles down to everybody.
Well, those are the words. So I was just going to say trickle-down economics, which is an economic policy from the 1980s under Reagan. But it's very similar to what a GC is and what we do as event managers, right? So we kind of serve at the top and then we feed money down. So when we're impacted, they're impacted. And that's the problem, right? As you get down the food chain, they have less financial resources and less ability to kind of reboot or to weather the storm. And that's the unfortunate part, and this ties back into employees, right? It's unfortunately they don't have the same wherewithal or financial capital in order to sustain this problem, this pandemic.
Yeah.
But we got to get through it.
I know. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, I mean, there are many things, but, you've expanded the agency from Miami to New York. New York being now called the epicenter of the pandemic in the US. How are you, what is that like? What's the environment for your employees in New York? How are they feeling? How are you keeping them motivated? That has to be super scary.
Keeping anybody motivated is almost impossible right now.
Right.
The reality is we try to do these team Zooms. I'm very lucky to have people that we call our hype squad, which is Rachel, Maya, and Maribel. And I'm very blessed with their energy. Right. Because they seem to kind of lift the team up. And you know this from your old green tea, from the day one when she was an intern for you. And I think Maya and Maribel have done a great job of learning from her. They have this great ability to just kind of rise to the occasion, even though internally they're dying just like everybody else is. But the
Right.
reality is we're just trying to communicate.
Yeah.
Unlike our president, and I don't want to spend any time on politics, who is doing the exact opposite, we're just trying to be honest with people and tell them what's going on. If we don't
Right.
have anything to say, we still let them know.
Right.
So we're speaking regularly, and we're having our senior leadership team, which is 7 individuals kind of broken up and compartmentalized,
This is
have
like blowing my
separate
mind
breakouts.
that you have this many people. We had 5 people, Brett. How did you end up at 40 people in the agency? It's insane.
And if you can believe it, we're even organized now. And that's kind of the
Oh
tragic
my
part about
God.
this, is that we had actually started to figure out how to compartmentalize and have senior leadership lead up and
Right.
let people run their respective divisions.
Mm-hmm.
So while we had main hubs of Miami and New York, we actually had 2 personnel also in Atlanta. And these are just the full-time, not the vendors. If you include the vendors, we had 5 personnel in Atlanta. Rachel, obviously, in Houston, Kevin Thornburg in Dallas. We had, if you add it all together, 5 different satellite offices. So
Crazy.
communication, Skyping or Zoom is key, right? It's just,
Right. Just the way you
and
work.
just be open, honest, direct, and
Yeah.
available, which has
Yeah.
always been a hallmark of the agency,
Yeah.
is being available.
You've always had an open door policy. That which I
Hmm.
can say.
Good, bad, or indifferent. Crying together mostly.
Yes, a lot of crying together.
uh, but it's tough right now.
Yeah.
New York. Fortunately, most of the people in our New York office got out. A
Great.
lot of people have parents in Florida. Some
Thank God.
people have loved ones in California. Some people went home to Jersey. Whatever it is, most people got out, including Lisa, who was fortunate to get out to Maryland and then drive down.
Yeah.
So sadly, we don't have much of an office in New York anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Even the office in Miami, Alan goes in a couple of days a week. I pop in, twice a week for
Right.
no reason other than to get
Just
out of the house.
presence. Yeah. Yeah.
It's not like anybody's in it.
I know. So one of the key hallmarks for you, I find, for people that are joining us, thank you for coming in, is you've always been one of the benchmarks for me, for sponsorships. I've, you know, many times I don't know how your ears haven't burned you, but I've spoken about you in the context of being able to sell ice to an Eskimo. And of course, my most favorite phrase for you is you sell the dream and we service the nightmare. I'm sure you're doing that 13-fold right now. What's that sponsorship space like? How are you communicating to the sponsors of these events, of these properties? How are they
Sure.
feeling? I mean, they're obviously human, so they know what's happening and everything, but how are they feeling in the space, and how do they see sponsorships moving forward, and what are they holding on to?
Well, we're blessed, right? So at this point, we have a pretty seasoned team. We've got 5 full-time personnel in addition to me, which would make it 6. The reality is, it's just like I was saying with our staff. It's over communicating. There are deals still happening, few and
Right,
far between, but there are still deals happening, but almost exclusively in Q3 and Q4.
right,
Business is completely grounded to a halt. So it's obviously very difficult, even for example, when you're planning like a New York Wine and Food, which is one of our anchor clients and obviously incredibly important because of LBS.
right,
Lee. But the problem is you don't know what it's going to look like. So it's very
right.
difficult to tell your old, reliable clients, let alone new prospects, what the event is going to look like when you have no idea.
Yeah,
So to be completely honest, we're over communicating with people just to say, hi, how are you?
we're here.
How are
Yeah.
you doing?
Mm-hmm.
When we're ready, we'll reach back out.
Right.
We actually closed 2 deals, 2 event deals separate from New York or anything else just yesterday, but they're
Wow.
both in Q4. So the
Okay, but
problem,
it's still good that people are actually thinking positively about that,
absolutely,
though. Yeah.
absolutely. There
Yeah.
is some hope on the horizon, but you have to get there.
Of course.
Think about that. November is 7 months away.
It's like tomorrow.
I don't know. When I'm sitting in this damn house every day, it doesn't feel like it's tomorrow.
Yeah, you don't know what day of the week it is anyway, but
Please. I mean,
yeah.
only because of you, I even showered today.
I know
Um,
I actually combed my hair for you today too. So you're welcome.
I don't know about me.
You can't say the same.
But the reality is, listen, business is business. People want to be exposed in the experiential space. That's never going to stop. How
Yeah.
quickly it comes back, that's up for debate.
Right.
Uh, the debate is not if it'll come back. We know for a
Yeah.
fact it'll come back because people love the space. People want to be involved in the space. People want direct engagement and interaction. It's the whole reason why businesses such as myself and all of my fellow colleagues and friends have been so successful over the last 20 years in the space. And I truly believe will continue to be.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to happen now is you're going to have contraction, right? You're going to have
Sure.
businesses go out of business, and then you're going to have an opportunity to gobble up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how that happens and how quickly that happens remains to be seen. The restaurant industry is devastated by this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how quickly those people come back, their interest in the culinary event space remains to be
Mm-hmm.
seen. But I still believe that people are going to want the direct engagement no different than they have in the past. It's just a question of how quickly it comes back.
Right. And I think, something interesting that Randy said yesterday too was that this is we want to go back to the analog experience. We want to be able to actually be around people, and
Mm-hmm.
we'll just have to change the way we do it, whether it is allowing more space, square foot per person in an event space. Hopefully we don't have to wearing hazmat suits, as chefs and walking around elbow bumping everybody, but it's definitely going to change the way we interact. I think,
The space has changed. It has changed forever. And what
yeah,
I mean by that is, for example, even as health and safety, the
yeah.
days of not wearing gloves if you're a chef or
Hmm.
even a bartender or mixologist over. We should always be practicing the ultimate high level of hygiene, from
Right,
sneeze guards to hand washing stations to hand sanitizers. That
right.
should be a given across the
Hmm.
board. The
Hmm.
way of the past of just crushing 10,000 people in there with nowhere to wash your hands, if you think
It's
about
not
it,
gonna happen.
it's irresponsible, and it
Yeah,
was irresponsible.
yeah.
Hell, from even a food, from food poisoning, things of that nature. So
Hmm.
forget a pandemic, forget a virus. If you take it back to its most simplistic of health scares, that
Right.
should have been a factor. Across the board, what does that mean? Your expenses are going to go up. We're already
Hmm.
forecasting our expenses to go up 10 to 15% across the board just for the health standards we're going to have to be adding.
Right,
And as far as people, we know that we're going to be limited in the number of people.
right.
So we're planning on whether it's time slots, whether it's 100 in, 100 out, no different than when you're going to the grocery store right now.
Hmm.
6 feet apart, X number of
Yeah.
people allowed in the store, Y number of people come out. We're planning on that. Now, eventually, again, when there's a vaccine, that goes away, right? The fears go away. But there could be another pandemic in the future. So I just think that the health standards will be a part of our new norm.
Right.
And I think that all of us are going to have to adapt in the short term. And short term
Hmm.
is 12 to 18 months here of
Hmm.
what the event space is going to look like.
And so, you know, part of what I wanted to kind of touch on too is like what experiences are like multi-city. So you've had the fortunate situation, and I've experienced this with you, and thank you so much. If I haven't said it before, I'm going to say it. For the opportunities that I got to work in multiple cities. Because of Agency 21, I was able to expand past Miami, and I mean, I'm coming from Kingston, Jamaica. So lucky for me, I was able to do events with you guys in Chicago, in New York, the 2-day stint in Montreal, the only time I've ever been to Canada, and now you're in so many other cities. You're in Atlanta. You have a lot of reach. So what is that like from city to city? Are you getting, forget COVID for a minute, because we know it's here
Sure.
and we're going to go back to it constantly. But what was that like in terms of the experience working from city to city? And even we can even segue to what your experience was like coming to Jamaica, which I know was like a big culture shock for you, but we can get to that at a later time.
Well, each person's different, but I would say, consistent with what you just alluded to, for anybody working at the agency, it was certainly a selling point. The ability to travel and be exposed,
Yeah.
because the company culture, which is so important to me and Alan and Lisa and Rachel and everybody else, was always about work hard, play hard.
Hmm.
That is going to be a part of our culture moving forward, right? So no matter where we went, let's say it's in Colorado producing an event in Snowmass,
Hmm.
we would always go on team hikes. We'd always have team dinners. We'd always have
Yeah.
team drinks. Drinking obviously is an
Drinking
essential
was
part
definitely a big part.
of everything part of A2I. And the reality is that work hard, play hard is the difference that enables people to do the job tirelessly. I mean, think about it. Producing events at the scale that we were producing events, working multiple weekends, crazy hours, load in, load outs. You got to be a little crazy.
Absolutely.
You also have to love your job and the people to your left and your right. And so that's why that work hard, play hard was such an important key balance and will continue to be so. The answer is by being fortunate enough to produce events all over the country, you learn what's going on in the marketplace. There
Right.
are some unique variables, right? You have to always factor in a localization into each market. But in reality, the national scale or the national approach is consistent. People, for example, if you're looking at it from a pure sponsorship standpoint, a MasterCard, a Capital One, so on and so forth, for them, they love the ability to work with one agency, negotiate one deal, have
And
us
then
go
spread their
handle.
wings.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
turnkey. They can
Yeah.
trust, they learn to rely on you, trust you, they know exactly how you're going to produce an event versus having to negotiate multiple deals with multiple different partners and different benefits and intangibles that they're receiving in return. So it's what we've learned is that's one of the key differentiating points of us versus another experiential marketing firm. And will continue to be. We have scale. That's a key point. We have scale, we have reach. We know that we're hitting the eyeballs, and we know that we're executing events at an incredibly high level. And then on
Yeah.
top of it, our sponsor activation team led by Rachel Davies, we know that we're handling things with kid gloves. And that's
Yeah.
the key, because in the end, it's always about the people. Experiential marketing is a service business. It is always about how
1000%.
we treat people.
1000%. And I'm so proud of Rachel. I mean, I remember when she came to the office and she had no clue about sponsorship, and now
Listen,
she's
she
a
still
sponsorship
doesn't,
activation
but God, do we
director.
love her.
So that being said, talk about your experience going across borders and coming to Jamaica to work on Nam Jam. What was that like for you? And I mean, let's just say, I forgive you. I had just had a baby, so I didn't even know about our project. But what was that like in terms of the culture shock and like the, being able to see how things are done here? Not necessarily how it's done traditionally, because like I had said to you too at that point when you were, when we were going through and talking about some of the challenges that you had, it was not necessarily the normal route that you went through. But what was that like for you?
I would say that doing anything internationally is always the hardest part. Whether it's the projects we do in Canada or the project we did with Nam Jam in Jamaica at GoldenEye, which, as you know, is the most stunning property you can imagine to produce an event with Chris Blackwell. But the problem is you have import and export laws. So in every government, you have different variables. So not only was it a culture shock, an ethnic culture shock, right? Just different, people need to do things right, 9 to 12 different, people personalities, just overall the kind of black-white debate as far as class and culture within Jamaica. You have foreigners coming from the United States producing an event. So there is just this natural divide that made it incredibly difficult. Not to mention, we were doing it at this uber posh property and bringing people onto the property. Some people have been there, some didn't. So we struggled. That event was the ultimate struggle. Even bringing in chefs and their food, getting the food into the country, getting chefs into the country while just flying obviously domestically, super easy, but getting their equipment, getting everything you need. So we struggled. It's really difficult, in my opinion, to have foreigners produce an event in a foreign country. I think you've got to go 80% local, 20% external moving forward.
And I think that's what we spoke about at the time, was that, when looking at doing things, not just in Jamaica, but internationally, there has to, and talk about a localization, you have to have somebody on the ground that understands the language. It's just like if I decided I wanted to go do an event in New York, or if I wanted to go do an event in Atlanta, why would I bother, it's like, why bother reinvent the wheel? Why not speak to the people and collaborate with the people who understand the space and understand the lay of the land and who to talk to and what to do? And that's why we talk about the sharing and this network of people amongst our industry. There is enough for everyone. So we don't need to be fearful of the competition. The competition is good for the consumer, it's good for us, it motivates us, it drives us. And in circumstances where we need to lean on people's area of expertise, lean on the people who know what they're doing. So, you know, it's like if one day we do Agency 21 Caribbean edition, it would naturally make the most sense, Brett, for you to contact the people that you know in the countries that you want to go to, you know?
Completely.
The local knowledge is important, it's vital. And as you say, we're in the service business. So people are going to do things based on trust. The trust that they have in the practitioner that they know are going to be reliable and relevant and are going to give them what they need and value for the money that they're spending.
There is no question about it. And we talked about it again earlier. It's that trickle down. If you think about it, or GC again, you have the local tenting company, the local AV company, you've got the local, waste management, security, so on and so forth. Us, me, whomever doesn't have those relationships. Not to mention, you can get a better deal. Not to mention, local governments, institutions, they want to support local people. Local is absolutely key. So you can bring your competence, your intelligence, your experience on a consulting level to help put key instruments in place. But other than that, you got to step out. You got to let the locals do it, right? So building that key camaraderie, you have to, in the event world, you historically need to do things right, 9 to 12 months, right? When you're doing an international project, you probably need even more because you have to build a rapport and a trust with one another because you're relying on each other, right? So I'm relying on you to execute our vision, whatever that vision is, on a localized level. I need to take key lessons or learnings from you on how to adapt what we may do here in Miami, in New York, blah, 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 how to do it in Kingston. Because again, every market's completely different and the cultures are so different. How we may do something, you may not do it.
Well, a case in point, when I talk to people here about sponsorships, and it's one of the things that, I learned a lot through you guys and through whether it was a festival or the different properties that we worked on and different clients that we had, what value are you giving to the sponsors? And then also on the flip side, what do the sponsors have that will give value not just to you, the property, but also the consumers that are engaging in the property that they're coming to? I think here what's harder is that, of course, competition is super stiff. So unlike big festivals like South Beach or New York or even New Taste at Upper West Side, you could have had competing brands, not necessarily in the same space, but doing different things with the same property. Here you find that there's more of a nature to go more exclusive. Everything has to be a one brand show, be loud and proud and like plaster their name everywhere. How do you think how do you think that's changing in the landscape in terms of sponsorships? Like, gone are the days, when we remember when Kellogg's had Kids Kitchen and when Whole Foods had, or Publix and MasterCard had the grand tasting. How are those sponsorships changing now? Forgetting COVID, but like just overall the trend.
Everything comes full circle. For example, Publix was in, then it was Whole Foods. We're back to Publix. Right. So the reality is there's so many different variables that come into a sponsorship. You spend so much time. Darren from my team has really done an admirable job of building core relationships that I had started over the years that he now leads. Right. But for example, what he does is you have to continue to work these relationships. Publix, they were gone as a partner for 10 years, and now they're an anchor partner of our grand tasting. Right. And specifically the culinary stages that Dev Inc. produces. The reality is you're constantly changing. And the reason it's constantly changing is for multiple reasons. Different brand initiatives, different objectives, different goals, but also different personnel. The person you initially developed the relationship with, guess what?
They're not there.
They're not there. They got fired, they're ambitious, they move up, they change. So the vision you once had may not be the vision you currently have. So you have to constantly be evolving yourself. Right? There used to be if you look at the Xeroxes and the old school companies that die off over time, it's because they don't evolve, they don't adapt. So you have to do the same. And that's really what sponsorship is, right? It's all an evolution. And the way that we've always been successful is something we call consultative selling, which is asking questions. It's actually so simple. 90% of the world is just afraid of selling. 10% thrive in it, right? So I fall into the thriving.
Absolutely.
No fear whatsoever.
You say anything, you ask anything at any time of day. I mean, guys, I have watched this man single-handedly Like literally sell ice to an Eskimo. And he's relentless. I think persistence, like you are the most annoying person on the planet when it comes to that.
Thank you. I take that as the ultimate compliment.
It is a
But I
compliment.
will tell you, but you're selling your husband on X, Y, and Z, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I am always constantly saying everybody's a salesperson.
Yeah.
It's the stigma. Get the
Yeah.
stigma and remove it, right?
Yeah.
We're all selling our personal interests, personal points of view, personal objectives, right? We're all trying
Mm-hmm.
to convince the other side to do things our way. Hell, this
Right.
goes back thousands of years.
Yeah.
It's the stigma of selling. So I've just been able to block it out. I enjoy it. It's a game. It's a game. That's literally all that it comes down to.
How do you do that though? Like, how do you continue to, you know, I have a couple of people online I know that have had that issue where, they hear the word no and they can't deal with the rejection. And one thing I've always admired about you is that you just always persisted, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you wouldn't take no for an answer. You find a loophole, you find a way. And even if they tell you no, you move on to the next person with with a different spiel, if you will. But what is that thing that drives you to continue to persist and to go after that client?
Well, it's two things. You can't be a liar, right? So you can't be a scumbag. You can't be a bad person because that
Right,
always catches up to you. That's number
right.
one. Number two, you have to genuinely like people. So inherently,
Yeah.
I like people. I
Hmm.
want to help people. My team, right? I'm very blessed. Nick, Evan, Kevin, Anthony, Darren, these guys genuinely are charismatic, personable, fun-loving individuals. That's
Hmm.
super important because the way that we sell is we completely move away from the sell. It's not about the sell. It's get to know the person. Ask the questions. Actually,
Hmm.
every single sales call I always say to people, what do I start off with? I make a joke about the weather. It's so stupid, right? But think about it. I live in Miami. So I selfishly get to make the joke because I know that my weather is pretty much always great.
Right.
You want to talk about anything but the sell.
Yeah.
When you
So it's not
dive
a hard
in,
sell. Yeah.
absolutely. When you
Hmm.
dive into it, you have to go immediately to the heartstrings. You
Right.
have to make the person truly believe you will do everything in your power to represent them, that
Hmm.
they're the client, whether you actually represent the event or who you actually represent, that you need to. And this is why sponsor activation is so key, and the amazing team that I have is so important. That they make it personal.
Yeah.
People who joke that business and personal are two separate worlds, they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. The reality is they're completely intertwined. Your
Yeah.
business life affects your personal life affects your business life. I don't
Hmm.
care who
A
you are.
hundred
There's no way
percent.
of separating the two. So salesmanship is having a drive, but something you believe in.
Hmm.
So that's important, right? And being a student of your craft, something I always drive home to my team, student of your craft. Know what the F you're talking about. Don't get on a phone, call X brand, talking about a festival, and when they ask you the first question, you don't know the
The
answer.
answer. Yeah.
You lose all credibility.
Yeah.
So you have to know what you're talking about. Now, I've got a lot of years of experience doing it, so I can go in cold. I actually
Hmm.
prefer to go in cold. But my
Hmm.
guys, they better study. Get organized before they have a call, certainly before they have a live meeting.
Right. One of the
So,
questions that just popped up was, have any of your events expressed going virtual?
okay, so I'm laughing, right? Because over the past 6 weeks, the words digital, the words virtual, and the words pivot
I
are
know.
annoying the hell out of me.
AF, I
So
know.
the answer is we're not a digital marketing agency.
Hmm.
Now, when we do we
Oh,
alter and try to become much more involved in the digital space? Absolutely. But the reality is, oh, Kimmy, can you hear me?
yep, I can hear you.
Okay, good. But the reality, it's not who we are today. We are
Yeah.
attempting to, over the last several months, we've actually started building our own marketing department. And we're attempting to, like, so for our brands, whether it's Buffalo Trace or it's Woodford or it's Whistle Pig, so on and so forth, and I focus for whatever reason on mostly whiskey brands. We are trying to create content for them, whether it's for our Koshan 555 tour or our Whiskey of the World tour. We are trying to create digital content for them. But truthfully, that's just to be relevant. And it's just to give them additional benefits and sponsorship assets during these times. It's not who we are. There are 8,000
Yeah.
digital agencies out there. We don't need
Yeah.
another one. What
Yeah.
we need to do is just become a more savvy marketing agency so that we can reach more people and communicate to more people promoting our events when we come
Right.
out of it.
Right. And kind of jumping back to what you were talking about before in terms of emotion and being there, I think what people take for granted, and again, we touched on some of this yesterday with Randy, is the emotional connection and how much we pour into what we do. You know, whether you're doing a large scale event, you're doing an intimate dinner, you're doing, a charity project, or you're doing something purely for profit. At the end of the day, I think as event practitioners, we go into this with our hearts on our sleeves, knowing
Hmm.
that we're pushing every ounce of our fiber of our being into things. And yesterday I
Hmm.
touched on mourning the loss of events and mourning the loss of a project you've worked on. I mean, you and I have definitely worked on some things where, we pushed through and created all kinds of projections and pitched things, and it hasn't come to fruition. When you think about Wild and Green Fair, for example,
Hmm.
that was one of the most taxing events I've ever worked on in my entire life. And I can look back at it now and say I'm really proud of that it happened. And
Hmm.
obviously it came at a time that was difficult for me, but that was not an event that I enjoyed working on in the beginning. It was something that challenged me 1,000%. I mean, what did I know about environmental events? What did I know about, this person, this artist? He's a world-renowned artist, but I didn't care. I didn't know who he was.
Hmm.
It didn't mean anything to me, and I think that's important. If something doesn't mean something to you, if you don't believe in it 100%, if there is not an emotional connection or a connection to it, you have a hard time being able to see it to fruition. And it's so important to have that connection, and not be afraid of the loss of it either.
That is, and I will tell you, that is a struggle, right? When you're an agency that had become the size that we had become, not everybody is as passionate about X project or Y project, but you
Right.
still have to do the job, right?
Right.
So that goes back to something I alluded to earlier, which is you're doing it for the person to your left, you're doing it for the person to your right, and you're doing it to uphold a standard that is, in our case, the 821 standard, right? Or as
Right.
we kind of say, bleeding green, right? The
Mm-hmm.
reality is that if you are at the top of your game, no matter if you're as super passionate because you believe in the product or not, for example, Koshan 555, there's nothing that grotesques me more than watching the butchering process of a pig. It
Oh
makes
God.
me absolutely sick to my stomach, right?
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I'm much more into our seed festival, which is a plant-based festival. That's my personal
And
passions.
that's you now, not you 10 years ago. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Where I wouldn't eat a vegetable then, but now it's
Right.
basically all that I eat, right?
Right.
But that's correct. And there is a place for both. But the
Mm-hmm.
reality is you can see why both have a place in this space. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you're assigning XYZ personnel to it, you try to think that through, right? You try to put the right personnel on the right project, but it doesn't always work that way.
Right.
So you sometimes have to fake it. You sometimes just
Till
have to
you make
remember
it.
that it is your job
Mm-hmm.
and that you are excellent at your job. And it is your job to execute the event, whether you love the category or not. And going
Right.
back to your Wyland, fast forward, that event probably would have huge upsides right now, minus the fact it doesn't
Absolutely.
have major talent.
Yeah.
Um, and as you alluded to, you always learn more from your failures than your successes,
Mm-hmm.
sadly.
Absolutely. Yes, sadly. Um, where are you guys at now in terms of, because so we speak a lot about culinary and we have
Hmm.
a huge relationship with food, but I know when we started out, and I know you still do some stuff for Dwayne Wade and the Wade's World
Hmm.
Foundation. What was that transition like? I mean, I know that obviously Alan and Lisa are very heavy into sports because of Alan's
Hmm.
background, and you more so on the food side. How is that working out, and what is it like in that space as well, in the sports arena, in terms of events, and knowing that there are no games happening, knowing that there is that no connection to a sport right now. What do you see happening in that space?
Everybody's in the same place, unfortunately. We're all screwed.
Yeah.
We're all screwed together. I mean, the reality is there's just nothing. There's nothing going on. And there
Mhm.
won't be anything going on for the foreseeable future. Um, so unfortunately, do I think that sports entities and sports figures still have a huge reach? Of course. I mean, social media is bigger than ever, and those people are communicating, utilizing those channels. Do I think
Mhm.
when we come out of this situation that those opportunities will be just as successful? Absolutely, if not
Yeah.
more. because
Yeah.
people are going to be so yearning to have that engagement.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like, spring fever in the Northeast, where
Yeah.
as soon as the weather changes, people kind of get a little crazy.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
I expect that to be very similar. People are going to
Mm-hmm.
want to see people. They're going to want to talk to people. They're going to want to see celebrities. They're going to want to just be around other entities. So that's why I'm still very bullish on the space.
Right.
Our appetite, which is a voracious one, as you know, has
Mm-hmm.
not diminished at all.
Mm-hmm.
But sadly, no matter what the event is, whether you're fashion, art, sports, or culinary, we're all in the same thing. There is no large scale engagement going on anywhere right now, but it
Right.
will come back.
Yeah. Um, where do you see yourself going? I mean, as you said, your appetite is huge. I honestly, I knew that you would have been big. I didn't imagine this much growth in a short amount of time, to be very honest. But I'm proud of it, and I'm really
Thank you.
proud of all of you guys. You know,
Thank you.
what do you see happening for you guys in the next 5 years? What do you want to be? And how do you each one teach one? Where's the mentoring factor in all of that and the expansion and the growth?
Well, that again, that goes back to what I said earlier. For me, it's always personal.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, everybody that works for me, I have a personal relationship with. I always joke, and anyone that's ever worked for me has always been invited to my son's birthday. So, continuing those relationships are absolutely vital to me, and that will always be a hallmark of A21. Where do we want to go? We want to take over the world, and that hasn't changed. And as long as I am breathing, that probably won't change. I think it's going to be difficult to in the near future, but long term, I think we're going to see an absolute explosion on expansion. And
Yeah.
so what does that really mean? We're going to have to evolve into a full service marketing agency or a consulting agency, depending on how you want to look at it.
Right.
So, I mean, if we had a whiteboard behind me, I could give you the entire plan. It's actually not that complicated, right? It's simple vertical and horizontal integration, which is to start doing every category, whether that is, as you already know, we're in the brand consulting, event space, sales space, activation space. We're
Mm-hmm.
not in the production space, and by production space, I mean brand production. Like
Right.
our friend Dale Moore, all those entities, MKG, things of that nature, who physically fabricate. Not that we want to become a carpenter,
Right.
but the reality is the full control and execution from a pitch to a sale
Mm-hmm.
to an execution. To do that, you also need a marketing department, and I alluded to that earlier.
Right.
So we started building a great marketing department led by Lauren Malamed in our Miami office, and that is something that we're going to continue to expand and invest in. What's weird is we actually always did things backwards. We were always so hungry about getting the business. We never actually thought about how to actually promote the business.
Right.
We've now had a nice pause to think, wait a second, the most truly successful entities can also push and promote their events to sell more
Mm-hmm.
tickets. So that's
Mm-hmm.
going to be a huge concentration. Ticketing, maybe it's a ticketing agency. And then it's really going in the horizontal direction, which is moving off of just doing culinary and sports and a little bit of fashion,
Right.
which Maribel somehow blends between sports and fashion. But the reality is that way you're diversified. Would
Mm-hmm.
it have helped us in this position today? No, we would have
Yeah.
been just as screwed.
Yeah.
Will it help us in the future? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
No different than I was alluding to with earlier companies that have been evolved and adapted. I don't want to be one of those. We don't
Right.
want to be one of those. So we're going to diversify the portfolio. As if you think about it, our core competency, people skills, execution, production, salesmanship, you can do anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So the goal is to do it across the portfolio. Not quite into the in the bar mitzvah and wedding stages. We'll let others focus on that. But
Yes, thanks
hell,
for
listen,
leaving something for the rest of us here, Brett. Thank you.
listen. If this doesn't turn around quicker, we may have
You
to.
may have to. Try anything. Try anything. Little quick file. Best event memory to date, if you can
Best
think
event
about
that
that.
we've ever produced or attended.
Both.
I've told Lee this 6,000 times. My favorite event ever is still Sweet, which started the New York Wine and Food Festival. It is always going to be my favorite event because it was just absolutely stunning and unique. And I don't think it'll ever be replicated. Uh, my favorite event to attend, other than that one, was always Burger Bash, but I don't eat burgers anymore. So it was actually the first time I ever went to Burger Bash and didn't eat burgers. So kind of a loss for me. Yeah, that's a tough one. My favorite event probably is our Nirvana event in Arizona. Um,
Hmm.
it's we have a special relationship with our client, Bo McMillan, and that in the hotel, which is the Sanctuary Hotel in Scottsdale, Arizona. Um, it's a very unique relationship. So I'd say that's probably my favorite. Very small engagement. No event is more than 600 people. Total of 16 events. Again, something that we ideated, created from the figment of our imagination with our dear friend David Sabin, who also produces the Palm Beach Wine and Food Festival. Um, so that's probably my favorite event. And Arizona is kind of a cool place. Get to do my hikes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and favorite event to attend that's not ours, maybe one
Mm-hmm.
day, Devin, is always going to be the Aspen Classic.
There's just something
So,
special about that.
because
Something
it's
so
Aspen,
special about Aspen.
because it's Aspen,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
it's just beautiful, and that's no different than Lee's success story has been Miami in February for South
Yeah,
Beach. It's the
yeah,
same thing with Aspen.
yeah,
It's Aspen in June.
yeah.
So that's kind of the formula.
Um, what's a nugget for people to walk away from right now? What's the key word of advice right now during this time to kind of keep the hope alive? And I just, you kind of said, it's hard to motivate people, but you have to find a way, right?
Hmm.
So what's the key takeaway right now for you? What are you doing to stay sane? And what would you advise people, especially in this space?
Lots of alcohol. Um, Kimmy, on a serious note, I've never run so much. I've never exercised so much. That's part of it, right? I also can't
Hmm.
sleep. So it's a balance
Hmm.
between not sleeping at all and that. I'll tell you, I spoke to Nick Kokonas, who's the owner and founder of the Alinea Group in Chicago, which is one of the greatest restaurants in all of this country. And his words to me have really resonated. Take the time, be creative. So
Hmm.
if I have anything that I could pass on and share from one of the greatest restaurateurs in this country is his words. Take the
Hmm.
time, be creative. And that's hard for all of us, right? When you're busy, it's hard to slow down. As
Right.
my partner would say, treat yourself as a client. It's almost impossible
Hmm.
when you're executing. So in this downtime, it would be rather fortuitous of all of us to take the time to treat ourselves personally and professionally as a client
Hmm.
and try to be creative. It's
Yeah.
hard when you're in this depressing state, right? It's hard when you're worried and you're having so many negative calls instead of the positive calls.
Hmm.
But what I would say is try to separate, try to disconnect, try to put yourself in a corner. I've even tried meditating. And the
Oh my
reality
God.
is take the time and be creative. It
Yeah.
really is what everybody should be doing, because what you'll take away from this is not necessarily where you are today, but where you want to be in the future.
Hmm.
And then how you can effectuate change, again, in your personal life and in your business life.
Hmm. Are you having any of your sponsors, because of the personal relationship that you have with each of them to an extent? Do you find that any of them are coming to you for, you know, personal advice? Are you having to advise them
Hmm.
on what to do in business? And I think, we don't want to forget that the people who are, managing the checkbooks of a lot of these companies are human and
Hmm.
want human interaction and, kind of want to see that advice. Who is mentoring them, in times like this.
I will tell you, it's not just sponsors, right? I joked about it with Rachel and Maribel last night. I have been nonstop from 8 to 8 every day doing almost nothing. It's not like we're
Hmm.
creating and producing events right now. It's talking to people,
Yeah.
because people need affirmation, right? They need kind of this, they just want to bounce an idea off, because people are scared shitless right now.
Yeah.
Whether it's people who have been in this industry longer than myself, like my friend Herb Carlitz,
Hmm.
or even when this first started, I called Devin. Devin's been
Yeah.
doing this stuff for 40 years, but I wanted to talk to him.
Hmm.
It's everybody. Again, I keep saying this. We're all in this together. So the reality is, I am nonstop talking to people, because one way or another, the reality is we are an industry leader for a reason. And
Yeah.
it's because people do trust us. Again, that's kind of a theme here. They believe in us. So, like I even alluded to earlier, two of our clients re-upped yesterday. after 30 minutes of them saying, Brett, do you really believe it? I trust you. We're going to do this. If you tell me that your team can handle this and you believe we're going to get through this, I'm trusting you to make this decision.
Mm-hmm.
And if there was a true devil over here, which we all know lives on that side of the shoulder for me, you
Mm-hmm.
selfishly would just be pushing that for your own objectives, right? But that's
Right.
not why we're doing it. We have canceled, I told you, over 50 events. In large
Yeah.
part, we were pushing clients who were absolutely refusing to do so because we knew it was the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where it all comes down to trust. People
Yeah.
trust us. So, it's just
Take the
keep
time to
talking to people.
build the trust.
Always. It's
Yeah.
like with everything else, right? Just with your personal friends, your partner, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
It always comes down to building real depth in personal relationships. But right
Right.
now, I think everybody needs each other. So it's
Yeah.
key to just lean on each other and be there for them.
Yeah. Kimmy Spence actually asked a great question. What advice are you giving to charities that depend on?
K1, baby.
I know.
K1.
Yeah, guys, that's where the K2 came from. She trumped me in the office. What's the advice to charities that depend on fundraising events? Because you work on quite a few, and I've worked on quite a few.
That's a tough one, right? Charities always are in this struggle because it's such a competitive landscape. It's going to be
Right.
even more competitive landscape. What it comes down to is, again, what I would say is create, whether if it's an event, you have to create something that's appealing and interesting. Like I give the Food Bank of New York City credit 2 years ago. They recognized they were doing these really stale, boring galas. They transformed it. They came up with a much more creative content, which is what people want to do because the space has evolved.
Mm-hmm.
People don't really want to get dressed up in a suit anymore and sit at a horrible dinner and have rubber chicken. They don't want that. So what I would recommend to people is be honest with yourselves and be honest with your audience.
Right.
And you have to evolve.
Yeah.
And truthfully, just get out there. You have to. They're gonna have to work harder than ever. As
Mm-hmm.
crazy as that sounds, it's just the reality. They're gonna be competing even more.
Yeah, because everything is a charity. Everything is going to become a charity. Whether or not
Hmm.
you were established before or not, in trying times like this when funding is low and the cash flow is inconsistent, and everyone is going to have a need that they feel is greater than the next person. So it's going to be that much more difficult to stay ahead of the curve if you're not evolving, as you say.
But the difference now versus, let's say, the 08, 09 recession is people are cash flow positive, right? There is
Mm-hmm.
money out there.
Mm-hmm.
So people are liquid. And as you can see with all these different restaurant charities that have sprung up left, right, and center, including our own with the New York City Wine and Food Festival and South Beach Wine and Food Festival, is that people are being incredibly charitable.
Mm-hmm.
So that is less of an issue versus the last recession that we dealt with, 12 years ago. So money
Mm-hmm.
is out there. It's just getting the messaging across and then
Right.
creating unique experiences that people actually want to go to.
What do you think? Like, well, it's hard because obviously we're in a smaller country and stuff like that. But like for some of the restaurants here or some of the hospitality, I mean, obviously our tourism is, forget it,
Decimated,
obliterated.
right?
We're having some issues of surplus of supplies from farmers because they used to be able to service hotels and do thousands of pounds of produce, and now they're trying to
Hmm.
diversify and find ways to get rid of it, really, and also try to make a living. What would you encourage some of those businesses here to do? Like, what kind of nuggets are you getting from some of your restaurant partners or some of your affiliates in the US?
Well, so actually what we're looking to do and what we expect to be doing moving forward with across all of our events, and even though we're a small business that is hurting just as much as they are, the
Mm-hmm.
reality is that we're looking to support restaurants with different restaurant charitable organizations that we're going to be creating every single event moving forward.
Amazing.
We're also going to be specifically supporting the farmers. If you
Yeah,
think about it, it all starts right there.
of
And they're
course.
hurting just as much as we are.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're probably going to look to do across every single event, and I'm sorry, my dogs are joining us.
It's
Um,
life. Instagram versus real life. We're in real life right now.
it is, is that we're going to look to support individual restaurants financially and the farmers financially every
Okay.
single event, which goes back to
Amazing.
cutting into our margins. Our margins are going to be hit significantly.
Instagram doesn't want us to be great. Sorry, guys. I guess we were going on too long. If you have more questions, send them.
We lost you.
It's like they said, time's up. You're getting
I,
too good at this.
I was going to say, I just bore you to tears. You're just like, let's end it. Pirates
No,
exit.
not at all. I was like getting into it, and it was like, oh, it went away.
Local support, which again, what I was saying is it's gonna eat into your profit and loss statement. And so what people probably need to just take a harsh reality check is that you're not going to make real money again in the next 18 months. You just have to
Right.
survive. And so for us, the approach mentally that we're taking is that it's better to give back and help us kind of regenerate this position. And
Right.
after 18 months, go on the rapid growth phase again.
Yeah, and I think it's part of even the business model of investing, and knowing that your returns will come 2 years from now.
Hmm.
It's almost like you're starting a restaurant business, for goodness sake. It's like, you're knowing that this is a time for you to reinvent and reinvest, knowing that your return will come at a later date. But at the end
Hmm.
of the day, you're doing it for the greater good, and you're doing it for the long-term effects of things. And I think that's why conversations like this are important, and that's why I really wanted to have it. So just like everybody else, I was kind of going, well, what the heck next? What are we gonna do next? I can't travel, I can't escape, you know, I can't do anything. And I have two young kids. You have a son, you have 35 employees. We have to find ways and dig deep and have these conversations and be honest about where we are.
Listen, I've said it repeatedly. We're all in the same situation, right? We're the Jesus, or as I like to say, come to Moses moments where you're lost. I said to you, I've
Yeah.
had 4 bad days and I hate every single one of them because that
Mm-hmm.
means that I allowed the moment to get the best of me. And I'm better than that. I'm stronger than that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard not to, right? It's a lonely place that we're all in, isolated, whether it's in your beautiful home like you have in Kingston, or even mine here, whatever it is, versus other people who are stuck in their apartments and
Yeah.
literally can't go anywhere. They can't even go to their own building gyms. So
Mm-hmm.
there are so many people that have it so much worse than I could ever have, and I truly I'm empathetic for that situation. I feel for it. Um, we all want to go back to normal. My biggest thing on this is I just don't want to go back to normal too quickly. I don't want it to come back. I want when normal
Mm-hmm.
resets, I want normal to actually be back. So I'm in no rush. That's
It's
obviously my very
interesting.
democratic point of view.
Yeah.
But uh, but who knows what's right? Sadly, again, this is not going to return to normal until there's a vaccine.
Yeah.
So it's just degrees of abnormalities at this point.
Yeah. And do you think that obviously with the world being on the same playing field, like I think Brandon and I spoke over that yesterday too, and it's like everyone has just kind of leveled out.
Hmm.
And I read a very interesting thing the other day about all of us weathering the same storm but not being in the same boat.
Yep.
Because as you said, we're fortunate enough to have homes that we can walk outside. There are people who are living in, very impoverished situations, even here where there's 10 people in a house, with a bathroom outside of their house.
Hmm.
But the fact is that the storm is the same. How we weather
Hmm.
it is very different. And do you think that with this too, that there's going to be a lot more collaboration across the borders because of the empathy that we're all facing worldwide? I mean, we've jokingly said it and spoken about doing things here and there and whatever, but I think like now is the time more and more than ever to even talk about that and talk about going past the borders. I mean, who is doing that so amazingly well through food is Jose Andres. Like
Hmm.
he is, I mean, if you
Superhuman.
haven't, yeah, if you haven't watched him, if you don't follow him, even if you're not into food, just follow what he's doing for the world right now. Like I've
Hmm.
never seen somebody give so much of themselves and tirelessly, for the greater good and putting himself at risk
You
as a
know, the
result of it.
the reality is, Kimmy, we are all in a reset. I mean, even financially, if you think about it, we're all in a weird reset right now. And as
Yeah.
I alluded to several times on this call, some people are just not going to make it because they just don't have that intestinal fortitude to carry on.
Mm-hmm.
I can
Mm-hmm.
tell you point blank, I've spoken to numerous PR firms. They're done. They just don't have the energy to start over again because it took
Right.
so much energy, so much passion, so much commitment, so much time. And they're just
Mm-hmm.
not the same person they were when they started whatever agency, company, insert word. Um, but yes, I do think collaborations are going to be even more pivotal. Think about it. Everyone's also getting an opportunity to reset. to kind of learn from previous sins and not just do business the way they always did it because they don't have, because of the size of their staff or because of the culture they had created or the benefits that people had gotten used to. So as you're looking at business, there's going to be a very fresh opportunity to reset and relook
Mm-hmm.
at how you were doing business and to make key changes if you were starting fresh.
Yeah.
I for one, know that that is absolutely what we're going to be doing, right? Is
Right.
taking these 13 years of key learnings and applying it towards the new business, A21 2.0, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
because we're not going to be the same company we were. We're going to be a
Yeah.
better company, but
Yeah.
it's going to take us time to get there, and we need the time, we need the runway to get there.
Who pushes you? Who mentors you?
Well, I've always been blessed, you know, whether it's Bob Wyman out of New York or it's Lee, or it's my own wife. You know, I think that I'm very blessed to have a lot of key people that have been incredibly supportive of me. Even a family friend, Barry Goldstein, who actually just passed away, who was actually my first investor in my first company when I was a 21-year-old kid. I've always had people that are pushing me who saw my ability, whatever the hell that means, and have supported me. But I'm very lucky to have, you know, my wife and my son who drive me and push me positively or negatively every single day. You know, I have my team, Alan, Lisa, Maribel, Maya, you know, Darren and Anthony, you know, who I call my senior leadership team. You know, those guys challenge me. They know me and they
Right.
challenge me. Um, you know, so there's a lot of people that I'm very lucky to have called over my life, mentors and friends. You know, Alan probably being the most important one of them all,
Mm-hmm.
who I've been with, you know, for almost 18 years in two different kind of variations. So
Mm-hmm.
that kind of paternal father-son role we have with one another, being such different personalities, kind of the Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, North and South Pole of two personalities, it has worked. And so I'm probably most thankful for him over these years to push me along.
Now, I have a little tricky question to ask you, but has your management style changed since you and I worked together? So just explain to the audience, right?
That's a trick question.
Obviously. Um, I mean, I started out with you like as a colleague in a separate, you know, obviously working on the festival and us having, and you headbutted with a lot of people over the years, me included. I mean, we used to slam doors in each other's faces. I mean, we've shared a hell of a lot of F-bombs together. But we've also shared a lot of tears and we've hugged it out and we've, you know, we've managed to get through things. But I think one of the hard knocks was that, as you say, it's very hard to separate business
Hmm.
from personal. And when you're going through something personally, it obviously adversely affects how you do things business wise. You know, as you get older, you get wiser, you kind of learn through process, you know, you learn through those processes. Like obviously your approach is different. What do you think has been like a key learning lesson in terms of your management style and how to manage your team and relate to them?
Well, listen, I'm a passionate guy, right? And
Yes, we're well
passion
aware.
can be a good thing and a bad thing because it can rear its ugly head in difficult moments. You know, listen, Kimmy, you and I both went through a divorce together, which was a trying experience on both of us, and I was very blessed to have you as a friend during that time. But you know that experience leaves stains, you know, and that was
Mm-hmm.
obviously a very difficult time for me professionally and personally, and you learn from it. I would say the biggest evolution for me is being, you know, the ability to trust my team.
Right.
And as you learn to let go, and that's a key. And I'm always instructing others now to let go, because that's really the only way that you can rise further up, to tackle new challenges, to grow. I mean, again, to grow. That's the key word here, is by letting go. And
Mm-hmm.
am I still super passionate? Listen, I walk into sales meetings all the time with the boys, and they regret that I walked in that door,
Oh God.
because you know how I am, especially when it comes to sales. But the reality is, I'm very blessed to have a very smart, experienced, seasoned team that knows what the hell they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, listen, the South Beach Festival will be the first ones to tell you I'm on 50% of the calls now. I'm not as committed or personally involved as I used to be. Am I paying
Mm-hmm.
attention? Hell yeah, I am. Do I ask all the key questions? Do I know it? Do I like to think as well as or next to Lee? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the reality is, I now have a team. And in order to continue further achievements, in order to spread, in order to, or the people underneath you to create their own achievements and accomplishments, you have to let go. And so that's been the biggest thing, is letting people lead, letting people manage, letting people have the ability, or empowering them, right, to go and blaze their own trails, because they're doing it all with the same, they're carrying the same flag I am. It's the A21 flag. Like I said earlier,
Yeah.
bleeding green, they're all doing it. And if they do it, guess who benefits the most?
Yeah.
So I think that's been the biggest change. And again, stability in my personal life has been a huge key for me. You know, my son is a big boy now, and wifey's actually walking in the door right now. So of course she's talking about ears burning. She knew that I was talking about her. But I think that having stability at home is key, because without that, you're always wrestling with this kind of confusion of who you are and distractions. And as I alluded to again earlier, that devil over here kind of rears its ugly head. So those have been the keys for me to kind of stabilize me, or mellow me out as much as I can ever be mellow.
Be mellowed out. Exactly. Do you have a dream? Do you have a dream venue or a dream destination to do an event?
Oh yeah, I want to take over Europe. Well, I probably want to take over Canada first and then Europe. But oh yeah, absolutely. It's not a question of if either. Again, going back to what we were talking about earlier, but there are certain challenges. Recognizing that.
Especially now,
So we would have to build localized teams in each one of the countries. But absolutely, the goal is to replicate a lot of success that we've learned in the States, in Europe.
Wow.
We could use Canada as a trial ground, but it's very difficult. They're very resentful of Americans. It's very challenging to do successful properties in Canada.
Well, we welcome you with open arms here in Jamaica.
Listen,
so let me just tell you.
I could say to you much like you could say to me, make me an offer I can't refuse.
You have not been scarred from your Nam-Jam experience. You're happy to come back.
Well, Kimmy, listen, you know how I adore you, and there's nobody that hasn't worked with you that doesn't adore you. You have a very special skill set, because you have a very specific personality, right? You're very driven. You're very smart. You have incredible integrity. Listen,
and I didn't pay you to say any of that. Oh my gosh.
I would love the opportunity to have your crazy Jamaican ass back working with us one way or another.
Well, we're going to make it happen.
It would help with our ethnic diversity, as you know.
Well, we are very well aware that you need to diversify a little of the office. No offense to the A21 team, but we definitely need to get some color up in there.
Listen, if I keep tanning at the rate that I'm going, I mean, I'm going to achieve it for us.
Well, hopefully, I mean, unbelievable, but not a testimony to our relationship. We've been going on now for over an hour. But I think I wanted to just kind of start these conversations, and I'm going to reach out to the rest of our friends, in the business, and just kind of have honest conversations and offer the nuggets as best as we can to the people in the business, and even people outside of the business that are just looking for an outlet to kind of spark some creativity. I think it's extremely important that we kind of, as they say, Amanda goes, don't panic, we got them Hispanics. All right, shout out to the Latinos in the A21 team.
We certainly have enough.
I really wanted to just start this conversation. I mean, as you said, I think one of the strengths that we individually have as practitioners as we are is we have this ability to be intuitive to people's personalities and to know what people need and kind of and service that and help that. So I'm hoping that this is the beginning of many conversations to come with, the pros, the novices, whoever is in this business that can, pass something on to somebody else. And if it even motivates one person for each day that goes by that we're doing this, then we've succeeded at our jobs. So,
And it gives you something to do.
Oh, absolutely. And for us who have toddlers at home, it gives us non-ABC time. As much as I love it, I just think it's important to just keep the conversation going, and I'm really hoping it continues to inspire people. I love you too, Rachel. She was my mentor, Kimmy. I really just wanted to kind of open the doors for that conversation to happen. So, Devin and Andrew and, Rachel, and what it's like to also, it'd be interesting to talk to Rachel to see what it's like on the receiving end of the mentorship, because she's always said that to me, but I've never really understood what I've contributed to her life. I mean, she said it many times, but I don't really get it because I'm not the one that's receiving it. So, hopefully this is just the beginning of more to come, and we can just
Just
keep the door
just
open.
remember that kid was studying for her master's program while producing New York Wine and Food Festival with us. So, and now that
Incredible,
kid,
Rachel.
married, living in La La Land in Houston. But
Amazing.
Kimmy, that's part of what this is all about. It's about the giving back, right?
Yeah.
And that's part of what separates our kind of DNA and the Devon's DNA and the Randy's DNA and Lee's DNA. It's kind of the tutelage that we're giving to the next generation. It's part of what I love.
Yeah.
I love that education part. Good, bad, or indifferent. There is
Hmm.
plenty bad that I am teaching and passing on to others, but I hope there's more good.
Yeah.
And everybody has to do it their own way. You can
Hmm.
only learn so much. You have to fail on your own and succeed, and hopefully have the right support from people that you call a mentor, or people that you look up to or believe in, to support you during that time.
Yeah.
And I
100%.
appreciate you inviting me to this chat. It's good just to see you.
I know.
Kind of
It's
miss
been a
people.
while. I
I
do
know.
too. Especially when you can't get on a plane. So
I know.
thank God for the internet, thank God for Instagram, Zoom, and all of these other things, digital things that we have in
I
our lives right now.
I will be one of the first people. As soon as they say you can, I'm going anywhere.
I
Mask
know.
on, full hazmat suit. I'm going.
Can I tell you that's what I keep telling people. It's like, people are like, oh, they're gonna be so afraid to travel. And I think it's the opposite. I think people are just gonna kind of walk around in garbage bags and carry Lysol
It's
spray, and they're just gonna figure it out.
it's going to be both. People are going to be absolutely scared shitless,
Yeah,
but people are also going to go.
yeah,
That's why it's so important to stay healthy, be smart, stay healthy, exercise, eat right, everything that everybody already knows.
right,
And if you're sick, stay home. I mean,
exactly.
there's some simple kind of common lessons here that people should already know that they haven't been following.
Yeah.
And this, goes back to even what I said to you about, the future of food events. We're going to have to adhere to different hygiene standards, and that's a
Mm-hmm.
good thing. That's not a bad
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Yeah. Don't be afraid of it.
Yeah. Even in Jamaica, where people are just eating, jerk chicken off the side of the street. Yeah.
Okay, on that note, because I get all riled up about that. I love you. Thank you for
Love
taking the
you.
time. Stay
Take care of,
motivated.
take care of you and your family. I love you. Thank you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks to the A21 team, and thank everybody for joining. And hopefully we can do this soon.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.